Dr. Lay, something that you said ties to what Professor Sachs just said is this ignorance or deliberate overlooking on part of the DPP about the fragility of relying on American guarantee for Taiwan's security in the framework of what they propose. I was curious if you could tell us a little bit about how is the ruling elite in Taiwan responding to the overall neo-imperial strategy that the American elites are unfolding across the globe. I'm thinking about South Korea being forced into $350 investment, which it cannot materialize without massive amount of swap lines. It represents something about 70% of its foreign exchange. Even with Taiwan, we are thinking about the TSMC being forced into producing in Arizona, surrendering its intellectual property rights, etc. So under this set of contradictions, we have been seeing a lot of rethinking in places like India, in Brazil. How are the ruling elites who have been hitherto very deliberately chosen blindness about the reality, how are they responding to these kinds of arm twistings?
Well, a lot of things that you mentioned happened post April 2nd this year. Under the guise of trade negotiation, the current DPP government has not only acquiesced, but also facilitated the move of Taiwan's high-tech industries to the United States. It is not just TSMC and not just the dollar amount. With the other satellite companies and factories that will be moving alongside with TSMC, we are estimating by the most sort of authoritative magazines that we will have about 200,000 talents moving along with these companies. And that accounts started from 85 companies to about 200 companies to TSMC's US site. So if you think TSMC is the silicon shield for Taiwan, think again, because the silicon shield will be moved away from Taiwan and into Arizona and Texas. So that's number one. The number two is, if you look at what happens in the West Pacific, I'll tag on to what Jeff said earlier. US has very strong military installation previously in Japan, in Korea. Recently in Okinawa, the front islands very close to Taiwan, and then in the Philippines. Philippines just gave US 9 additional military bases. So if you look at the Pacific Deterrence Project, the most notable installations will be in the Philippines. Once again, without Taiwan in the middle, they still managed to build a pearl line of the first island chain. All of this will be consistent with the US strategy of peace through strength. And Jeff just said, you have sphere of influence or sphere of security. These are what China has been doing. Just think about RCEP and think about aerial denial and anti-access. One is on sphere of influence, the other is on sphere of security. It's very clearly delineated the area in which PRC is concerned about and is building a military to support its own security concerns. But US is a expansionary military presence in the West Pacific. Most recently, the Virginia-class nuclear submarine is in the Philippines. Previously, more and more sort of missile guiding installations are in Korea. They're moving the nuclear submarines, Virginia-class, to Australia. So in the United States overall game plan, there will be not only conventional weapons, but also nuclear submarines, most lethal weapons, positioned in the West Pacific. So that would constitute a potential for escalation. So let's go back to our history. Taiwan and China officially started and unfinished a civil war. In 1949, October 1st, exactly today, when PRC established its government, then you will have two different governments across Taiwan Straits. One in Taiwan, that's the ROC, the other in China, in mainland China, which is the PRC. both claims to be the only representation or legal representation of the entire China. So we are still in a civil war, and that hasn't finished. There was no peace agreement at the end of it. There was no one over the other. So technically, we are still at a civil war, but de facto, we are in peace for the last 66 years. The last time any bomb dropped in any land controlled by the ROC, which is Taiwan's government, is 1958, the year I was born. So I will never forget that year. 66 years ago, we had the last bomb dropped in Guimei. But since then, we were de facto at war. We are de facto in peace. That's what I mean. Sorry, misspoken. So we are de facto in peace. And why are we all of a sudden in the last 3 years keep talking about the potential war? Don't forget, Taiwan used to have a very strong military presence by the United States. We have a MAG, which is the military advisory group, training all our armies. And then we have a Air Force base in the central part of Taiwan called CCK. We have a large U.S. naval base in the southern part of Taiwan in Zuoying. So Taiwan had an extremely strong U.S. military presence, and U.S. ally trained and cooperated with us. We have strong joint operability that all ceased all of a sudden at the end of 1978. In fact, 1979, January 1st, Taiwan was no longer a U.S. ally. They severed diplomatic relationship. The Taiwan Defense Treaty ended 6 months later, so we no longer have official defense relationship with the United States. So all of these rhetoric about supporting Taiwan, military presence, which is quite a large number in Taiwan, and Taiwan's troop has been sending to U.S. overseas bases and U.S. Mainland bases for training. So that's, happening in recent years and recent months. But with all of these, they can no longer replace the kind of U.S.-Taiwan or U.S.-ROC joint defense treaty relationships before the 1979 severance of the diplomatic tie. So the DPP government may have an illusion that U.S. is supporting Taiwan militarily, and we are increasing our military budget this year by about $1 trillion. But we actually do not have the level of joint operability and the level of support that was our reality that protected Taiwan prior to 1979. There's nothing even close to that. So any illusion of U.S. support of Taiwan, I think is just a very beautiful playbook propagated by the current Washington diplomats as well as State Department personnel and the young and experienced DPP officials just took them all in. They took this bill of goods as a real promise to defend Taiwan.
大家好，我是主播周玉琴。很多的朋友告诉我们，太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌帮助了睡眠品质。现在呢，进一步推出晚安加强版，添加了首创最适合台湾人体质的天然 GABA、色氨酸、茶氨酸、香蜂草4大天然草本助眠配方，强化睡眠全期都起到放松舒眠的效果。太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌，它本身就含有台大专利授权克菲尔乳杆菌 M1 等8种专利菌，首创益生菌、益生元、后生元黄金3角配方，帮助维持消化道的机能。有季节敏感、代谢困扰、关心异常细胞风险的好朋友呢，可以选择原版的太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌，它添加有超级食物羽衣甘蓝，健康再加分。而有睡眠困扰的朋友们，赶快选择蓝色包装这一款晚安加强版，绝对是更有感。选择太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌，做好日常保养，实现睡眠自由，身体轻松无负担。每日克菲尔，时刻美好 ，Good Feel Good， 请上快点购为健康下单，而且要记得输入推荐代码，有额外的折扣优惠。